Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's webinar from wherever you are. My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm a Senior Vice President at Magic Software Enterprises, and I'm joined today by Ted Brennan. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Our topic today is Your Wish is My Command. Integrate Agile ECOs and bill of materials with your ERP. So we're going to be talking today about J.D. Edwards as our example system, and you should be seeing our slides as we go through here. Magic Software Enterprises empowers customers around the globe with smarter technology that removes barriers to business performance and systems integration. So we are presenting today's webinar, Ted and I, as representatives of Magic Software, but we hope that you'll get valuable education from this session, in which we will be talking about the various touch points for bill of materials and ECOs, and we'll actually be doing a live demonstration. Ted will take over at that point and show you as an example of an ERP system, J.D. Edwards, and the integration on the back end to the Agile Product Lifecycle Management system. So if you have questions, we do encourage you to enter those into the chat box, and that chat box will then, you should send it to the host and presenter, and Ted and I will both be able to see it in that fashion, and we'll try to get to those questions at the conclusion of the formal presentation. So our agenda today, we want to talk about the PLM integration, the various touch points, and get into some detail on that. We'll actually be using the data structure of Oracle E-Business Suite in that portion of the discussion. That way we'll be able to cover a couple of different systems. We'll cover E-Business Suite in the slides. We'll be covering J.D. Edwards in the demonstration. You'll kind of get both sides of that. We'll be talking about the various APIs, or application programming interfaces, that are available for the Oracle ERP systems, specifically PeopleSoft Enterprise, Oracle E-Business Suite, and J.D. Edwards. And then we'll be discussing the Magic XPI integration platform's role in both real-time, event-driven, as well as long-running processes with data integration and transformation capabilities. And we'll demonstrate all of that at the end so that you can see the stuff actually working. So without any further ado, let's talk about how it's important to have integration. There are so many data points that overlap between enterprise software systems, particularly in the area of enterprise resource planning, which is your financial accounting and the various planning processes around usually product manufacturing in your organization and so forth, and product lifecycle management systems, which really comes more from the less from the financial point of view and more from the product management point of view. But nevertheless, of course, products definitely involve finances, and there's a lot of overlap between the systems. We'll talk specifically about what those are. But as we look across the enterprise at the various systems that need to be integrated, whether it's ERP or customer relationship management, CRM software, supply chain management, SCM software, you may have a content management system like SharePoint, a specific HR system. Some of you run PeopleSoft specifically for its HR functionality, for example, and you may have manufacturing MRP systems, e-commerce platforms, and so on. So all of these various enterprise systems can have overlapping functions and processes that need to interrelate to one another, be triggered by activity in one or another system. And there's a lot more to this than just moving bulk data back and forth. That's a big part of it. It's an important part of it, but it's not all that's going on. So we'll be talking about that as well. The problem, of course, is that there's so many siloed data limits between these business systems that we really need to look specifically at what our Agile PLM system is capable of to find those overlap points. So Agile, is able to really take product management from conception to design and development through the prototyping phase, the launching and ramping, production, service and support, and even phase out and disposal. This is the real breadth and range of PLM in general, and particularly with Agile PLM, we see an excellent system for managing the change orders, whether they be engineering change orders, manufacturing change orders, service change orders, as well as keeping track of the bill of materials that are associated with all of your product-related processes. And that obviously is going to have some overlap with the ERP system, which is needing to touch that exact same data, and we'll talk about that. So you see that there are some key business processes in each of these systems that can be overlapping, with product lifecycle management. New items, change orders, inventory on hand are all things that are going to be key in ERP and many others. CRM is going to have customer service, master item database, pipeline and forecast information that they're interested in. HR systems, staff procurement, resource allocation, workforce products. Your supply chain management system may need bidirectional synchronization with your ECOs, bill of material synchronization. Your MRP systems are also interested in bill of materials, inventory control, basic scheduling functions. And your e-commerce, of course, needs to tie in with all the master item data as well as all the consumer product-related data, social commerce, and feedback loops, e-commerce feedback loops, and so on. So when you're working with SharePoint and your PLM system, you have a lot of non-PLM users in SharePoint. You have PLM users that use SharePoint, and product management is also going to be one of the users that may need to extend the human and document workflow aspects of Agile PLM into some of the SharePoint functions that it's well suited to. So you may have some touch points there as well to consider. But let's look at a more specific example. We're talking about ERP and PLM here today. When we look at the data mapping that needs to take place between Agile and EBS, for example, the item is obviously going to be a key concept in E-Business Suite, and in Agile it's really contained in both part and document records, where you have multiple fields. In EBS, you simply have the concept of a change order, whereas in Agile, these are broken out into the three categories of engineering change order, manufacturing change order, service change order. So you want to kind of realize that you're going to have multiple source points that are differentiated in Agile that essentially all look the same to EBS and to the EBS user. When we look specifically at the data mapping related to part and item, you can see that there is sort of a system of record in an organization that's running both Agile and an Oracle ERP system. The system of record for the definitional aspects of the master item database is typically going to be the Agile PLM system. That's where product management conceives of and creates these items, and therefore the item number, the description, the item type, the life cycle phase, the manufacturing part number, and various aspects of that particular part are going to be typically sourced from Agile and brought into Oracle as ERP systems in order to define that. But there's flexible data related to parts and documents that typically are going to be driven more on the ERP side. The cost, for example, is something that's going to vary over time, and that information is typically going to be coming from the ERP system. Whether the inventory is on hand and available to transact and available to reserve are all things which are relevant to Agile, but for which the Oracle ERP system would be considered the system of record, if you will. So these are areas where we need to see synchronization. Some of this is best handled in a sort of one-time data flow. Others are going to be more dynamic and event-driven. The bill of materials is another aspect, obviously. And then with the bill of materials in the Agile world, the information is typically going to be coming from there and flowing into the bill of materials structure that's kept track of in Oracle ERP. Where does that number come from? That assembly number is typically going to come in the Oracle ERP system from the Agile part document record, interestingly enough, whereas in the Agile bill of materials, the item number is actually what the Oracle ERP system would regard as the bill of materials component item number. So you want to keep that straight in terms of the data mapping that you're doing. Then if you look at some standard things, quantity will come across, find number will come across as the item sequence number, the reference designator would typically come across as the bill of materials item reference designator, the site comes across as site, no confusion there. But then the Oracle ERP system is expecting an effective date, and that effectivity date is actually going to come from Agile's engineering change order, which is a related table to the bill of materials table. So that is where you're going to find that information. So if you keep these things in mind, and this is specifically to Agile and Oracle E-Business Suite, then you're going to have the correct mappings going into this. We could just as easily be talking about the table structures required for PeopleSoft or for J.D. Edwards, but we'll use this as an example. I think it is a good one to start with. Now, the ECOs themselves are a little different. There, in Agile, as we said, you have three different types. You have a number, description, change order, class, scheduled, and site. Interestingly, most of that information is coming from Agile to EBS, except that the change status of the change order may actually be bidirectional. So that can be adjusted in either system and needs to be updated to either system. The affected parts information in Agile is relevant to the revised items information in Oracle EBS, for example. And then there's some subtables that relate to all this as well. So this is all very useful to start thinking about where do we actually see the overlap, how do we deal with these in our systems. Well, the way you deal with these overlaps, of course, is by working through the APIs. But the problem is the APIs don't speak the same language. One speaks French, the other speaks Spanish, if you will. In other words, the data dictionaries are different, the data tables are different, some of the business rules are actually different and need to be intermediated with a real-time event-driven platform that can handle both the one-time scheduled ETL-like processes as well as the more service-oriented real-time event-driven processes that your business requirements really demand. So with EBS, there's an API, and you're going to want to use an integration platform that's going to support the use of the Oracle SOA Gateway Web Services. And EBS integration platforms look for the option to also work with the Oracle XML Gateway sometimes. So that one of these two methods is probably going to be your preferred method. I think the XML Gateway should work perfectly fine, but some of you having adopted preference for the Oracle SOA Gateway may want to use that as well. Now, PeopleSoft, a little different scenario there. Those of you that are using PeopleSoft will know that there's been a number of versions and that the integration methodology has changed rather significantly over the years with those different versions. Since 8.4, however, you've had a set of web services APIs that work with the PeopleSoft integration broker, and those are probably your preferred method if you have that available to you if you're on one of those more recent versions. It's not really that recent, but if you're a relatively recent users of PeopleSoft or implementers of PeopleSoft, you should have that available. However, for some other versions or approaches. The PeopleSoft Component Interface API is available, and this is going to support programming component calls, Java, C, C++, even COM objects, web services. So that's another alternative approach that can be taken. It tends to get just a tad more technical, even though the solution we'll be talking about today kind of simplifies that a little bit by taking the line-by-line coding out of it and simply treating it as a way, if you can pass to a Java object or, COM objects and so forth, as a remote procedure call in a dialog box. And then there's at the very low level, again, depending on versions, you might need to use PeopleSoft application messaging, which is more of a flat text file, either XML or flat file versions of that are available, and that could be an option as well. So that's the scoop on PeopleSoft Options. As far as what's best, the component interface API is going to be something more for programmers that are creating a bolt-on application. So if you're an independent software vendor, that might be definitely an approach to consider. But if you're an enterprise IT department, then PeopleSoft integration broker is definitely going to probably be your best bet, unless you happen to be on those older versions, and then maybe PeopleSoft application messaging is the way that you have to go. And it's not that much more awkward than the web services, but web services just a little bit more oriented in their architecture. So J.D. Edwards users that are looking to integrate with Agile, of course there are APIs. It's going to depend on whether you're on J.D. Edwards World, which versions of World. With World 7.3, you're basically Z processes are your ways to get in and out or calling RPG programs. With World 9, you have more service-oriented options. With Enterprise 1, of course, you have the business functions, which are really superb and still represent the preferred method of integration, those business functions, and occasionally the use of Z processes for flat files, and the calling of those programs that run the Z processes can be an option at times. So those are the APIs, those are the methodologies that you can use. What will intermediate all of that? What will work with Agile and what will work with the ERP systems? Obviously, we work for Magic Software, so we're going to talk about the Magic XPI integration platform and actually show that to you in just a couple of minutes. The Magic XPI integration platform has both pre-built application adapters, which simplify some of the connectivity out there, as well as the API adapters that we've been talking about, so that you can work with these very technical methods in the background without having to write line-by-line code to do it. So you have loosely coupled integration where the Magic XPI integration platform intermediates between your various applications and using the best method determined by your business analysts for that particular business process. It sets up all the data maps and so forth that you need for that process, and it does it in a way that's really leveraging the Magic XPI application platform's use of an in-memory data grid technology, which gives you the fault tolerance, redundancy, the scalability you need to deal with the flood of integration data that's brought on by all of this. So the benefits of in-memory data grid are, first of all, reliability, because you have co-located processing in memory with sub-second failover and an extreme amount of redundancy. Anytime a process that's running fails, there's a failover in-memory area that takes over, and it's seamless and transparent to the end user. They don't even know that there was, some kind of a failure that took place. It's just so the amount of redundancy is such that it's never an issue. You also achieve scalability, sort of the other dimension of the grid comes in. So the enterprise-grade elasticity comes via in-memory computing. You're right back to the SQL database after the in-memory transaction takes place, rather than as a part of the transaction. You have the parallelism in processing so that you get that scalability, and you can scale it dynamically so that as requirements are increasing, you can flex the amount of processing and memory that's dedicated to these user spaces that are available in the InMemory data grid to run what's going on. So the Magic Integration Platform for J.D. Edwards brings a wonderful solution to J.D. Edwards customers. And in fact, this particular slide that you're looking at right now is brought to us by and presented in the Oracle's J.D. Edwards upgrade workshops. So they asked Magic Software to provide them with a slide that would explain to those that are considering upgrading how Magic XPI integration platform can help them with that upgrade, that can really get their integration house in order so that when they upgrade, it's all seamless and everything's transparent and the users remain happy. One of the biggest sources of dissatisfaction with an upgrade is that people change versions and they make a huge mistake of saying, well, we'll just worry about the integration after we get through the upgrade. And while that sounds good, it's disastrous, because the first thing the users do is they say, I can't see my information from the CRM system. I can't see my information from the PLM system. These engineering change orders used to be integrated and now they're not. And you have almost like a rebellion on your hands when you roll out the new version. So that, recognizing that that's not best practice, Oracle encourages getting your integration house in order prior to your upgrade so that everything continues seamlessly when on day one of your go live with your new version. So this is the slide that Oracle presents to their customers. They talk about the Magic Integration Platform, how it can connect to all the various back-end systems, how it simplifies the process through a drag, drop, and configure integration flow, that it's code-free, that you're able to build and monitor integration with one tool set. And this is very powerful for the typical mid-size IT department that's running J.D. Edwards and Agile PLM. And that's why so many customers are doing this today, and why Oracle is talking about it even in their upgrade workshops. And it allows you to preserve those integration flows even when you're upgrading JDE versions. So it causes people like Tim Whitlock of Mizuno USA to say things like, Mizuno's e-commerce integration kept running with near zero effort when we upgraded from 8.1 to 9.1. So your upgrades and your migrations from World to Enterprise 1 really do survive well. Those integration flows survive very well. Really all you're doing is pointing to the new IP address of the new J.D. Edwards system, and the integration flows for those business functions are going to just keep working because the APIs remain consistent from version to version of Enterprise 1. The Z processes remain consistent across versions. There's very little adjustment, if any, that's ever required. So that's the good news. And when you take all of this on, you can also consider mobile application addition, because the same integration platform that supports your integration between Agile and your ERP system also supports the development of offline mobile apps for your Agile and ERP systems. So that causes Gartner to put Magic Software in its rapid mobile application development vendor list. And they're suggesting that by 2018, more than 50% of companies that develop mobile apps will leverage rapid mobile app development, which is a significant increase from where it was just a couple of years ago at 5%. Now, Magic Software is the largest company in the RMAD list for Gartner. So we are pleased to talk to you, obviously, about this topic today of integration between Agile and your ERP system. But we also know that for many of you, you're facing the challenge of providing mobile apps that allow you to access key significant processes in your back-end systems. And we're happy to talk to you about how you can do that even in an offline mode with the Magic's technology for end-to-end enterprise mobility as well. So with that little commercial, we're just going to say something about Magic Software. We have been around for about 33 years. We have 15 offices, 1,300 employees, you know, more customers than we can keep track of, quite frankly. We're a publicly traded company. The NASDAQ Stock Exchange has us listed under the ticker symbol MGIC. We're publicly traded there. We have customers in more than 50 countries. We have some 3,000 global business partners, millions of users. And the technology is very future-proof so that you survive those upgrades. It's very collaborative so that you're able to work with business analysts, and business users can get results in a much faster way. And Magic has professional services to back up the software platforms that we offer you. So we're going to take a shift here now and invite Ted into this webinar so that he can actually share his desktop. So I've now made Ted the organizer, and he's going to share his desktop with us so that when we see that, we can pass the ball over to Ted for the presentation here. So Ted, I see your desktop. Please take it away. We're looking forward to your demo.
Outstanding. I'm looking forward to doing the demo. So good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever everyone is. This demo is going to be in two parts. I'm going to show you the solution itself and the software we use to build the integrations, and I'm also going to show you a live integration between Agile and JD Edwards Enterprise One. So Glenn, as you can see, what we have in front of you right now is what we call the XPI Development Studio. This is where we build the relationships in various applications we're working with. So the top and to the left, these are what we call process flows. So we like to say we are an event-driven sync utility. So we just need an event to tell us what to do. So the event can be creating new records or updating metadata in existing records. So for this here, I just want to show you, we're not just integrating between two environments, we can integrate between multiple environments. So here, I know we're talking about JD Edwards Enterprise One today, but the first part of this is I'm grabbing some new data from the Agile application, and I'm passing it not only to JDE, but we have a demo environment we're going to SAP as well. So, and that's really just to show you that once we have what we can go to multiple different applications simultaneously. So, today we're talking about PLM integrating with an ERP, but we can integrate with a CRM application and a PLM application and an ERP application, all at once. So you might have items or bills of material that change in your PLM application, and we can simultaneously push that not only to your JD Edwards Enterprise One environment, but also if you have Salesforce or SharePoint or Dynamics CRM or some other CRM application on the other end, we can push it there as well. So here, on the top and to the right, to my right, is an example of one of these flows. And as you can see, it's very visual. It's all drag and drop. Some of these are a little bit more complicated than others. Here's going to be the one we're using, and they're made up of these things we call components. So these components we're talking about, they not only give us connectivity to the various applications we're working with, but they also provide us with the appropriate API and web service calls as well. So whenever we integrate with another application, whether it's JD Edwards or Agile or something else, we always have to follow their protocols for how we integrate. And so we said to them, hey, we want to integrate with your product. They said, okay, well, this is how you do that. You have to follow this. So this comes with that built in already. So some of these we have pre-built applications for. So JD Edwards Enterprise One is a good example. We have JD Edwards. As you can see over here, here's some logos you might recognize. There's some SAP, Salesforce, Sugar. We have one for JD Edwards Enterprise One for World, and all our pre-built connectors are certified with the various vendors we're working with. But if we have an opportunity to integrate with something we don't have a pre-built connector for, well, that's okay because we have some more generic ones here. So I have a web services connector that can point to a WSDL file and all the methods and properties for those web services will be automatically populated. I have an HTTP connector, somewhere right here, that allows us to build and consume our own web services. We could even, some applications push XML files. We can strip an XML file. We can gather it through a data directory, or we can use our another pre-built connector to grab that information and break that out. And Agile is a good example of that. We don't actually have a pre-built connector for Agile, but what we do have is we have a generic HTTP connector where we can pass a SOAP request over to Agile to get the information we need. So in this example, I'm getting the file, and then I'm reading the list of information of the files, and I'll go over this in a little bit more detail later. But this is the file, the FTP that I'm getting from Agile, and if I expand all these, it shows that how I can pass those variables. So that's kind of how it works. I'm going to switch gears here for a little bit, and I'm going to show you how this works in real life. So I'm going to stop being Ted the developer, and I'm going to go being Ted the end user. So here's my item master in JD Edwards Enterprise 1, and here's my Agile environment where I'm creating a change order to a new part number called April 28 demo. So the way this works is whenever the workflow, there's a workflow to handle change orders in Agile, and when it gets to the release, it's going to go ahead and sync that over to JD Edwards Enterprise 1. So I did a couple this morning, although it says the 25th. I actually ran one of these this morning. If I go into here, April 28th demo, obviously, something shouldn't be here because I haven't run this already, but I skipped ahead here and I've gone ahead and set this up a little bit. Because creating new parts overs and going through changes, it's kind of a boring workflow, not real fun to watch. But the point of doing this is to really show you that this is seamless to the end user. End users don't have to do anything separate from what they otherwise would normally do. They don't have to have special software installed on their workstation. There's no special sync button or anything like that. All the sync and works as a Windows. It runs as a Windows server, seamless to the end user on the back end. Okay. So I'm going to go into the next status on the workflow. Oh, come on. There we go. I should go to released, and once I hit released, that should be the sync over to JD Edwards Enterprise 1. So I'll hit release. I'm going to go back to JD Edwards Enterprise 1. It's not over there yet. That's not it's working today. Come on. There we go. That'll take a 20. All right, there we go. I had it misspelled when I did this. So here's the new sync, and here's the demo part number that wasn't there before. Okay, so that's seamless to the end user. And again, I didn't have to do anything special in my JDE environment, and I didn't have to do anything special in my Agile environment. I just worked like I normally would work, and so me as an end user, I don't have to do anything different. It's just to see it happen in the background. Okay, so I'm going to go back into this application. I'm going to show you how we build this application. So as you can see, it's very user-friendly. It's drag and drop, and so I have different steps for different things. So the first part, obviously, I don't want to go in the interest of time. I'm not going to go step by step through each one of these. But the first thing we need to do is we need to get our information from Agile, and we need to pass it accordingly. So once we read it, we pass it into a here's reading parts, and I'm kind of going here and see how our data map will work. So when I go into here, you see a lot of different things. So when I have all my data, our connectors do what we call Schema Discovery. So we're not a template-based solution. We don't have to go in there and if you have custom entities or an application with custom entities or custom index fields, or you've done some kind of crazy things, well, that's okay, because our connectors do what's called Schema Discovery. So when we point to Agile at the top level data element, which is in this case is new part numbers, we get everything that's related to it. So if you got some other custom information out there, it doesn't really matter, we'll get all of it. And that helps us maintain the project as well. So if you have any changes, all we have to do is open up the solution and refresh this schema, and it'll pass that accordingly. So once I have everything I need, I can pass everything I need. So here, I'm just passing it from one to the other. So if I go into price, as you can see, I got some different things going on here. So I got a lot of, I'm updating, in this particular example, I'm updating some part numbers and some bill of material data. So I can get that all simultaneously, and I can even apply some constants in here as well. So typically when you're doing an integration, the person who's syncing the data, again, they're just end users, they don't necessarily have all the information they need or to create new records, because of course they don't know what that is. So if there are constants in there, so if we know that there's constants on your application that we need to put, we can hard code that in here. So here's where you see that. Here's some functions we've done to create to manipulate this data a little bit. So here I'm going, getting just a couple of information left of the data here. So that allows us to manipulate the data accordingly. So typically in an integration, once we come from one environment to another, we go ahead and pass that as an XML variable, and that allows us to manipulate that data in a number of different ways. So, obviously, Glenn was talking about, we have all these different web services and API calls, but it's not always a one-to-one relationship. Sometimes when we have a, when we're going from one environment to another, it's not always like values. So, we may have something that's coming in as a string, and we have to convert that to an integer. Well, of course, we can do that. We can get a little bit more creative too. Before we pass that along, we can do some validations on the data, and we can even get some data from another utility and build that variable accordingly to make sure we have everything we need before we pass that on to another application. Okay? So in this example, I've got all the information I need. I've mapped it to my XML, and now I'm ready to pass that to JDE. So for that, we use our JDE pre-built connectors. So the way our connectors work is that they can do Schema Discovery in the environment. So all I have to do is pass some information at the top level data element, and we can utilize the business functions that are built in JD Edwards Enterprise 1. So here, I can go ahead and every time I click on this, it's going to go back to JD Edwards and say, give me what you have. So it's going to give me all the available business functions, the custom ones included. So once you have what you need, you can go ahead and map it accordingly. So here I'm using the business functions to create master data, and let's see if I can. These are maps basic, so I can get some of the program manufacturer. So this is actually where I'm mapping my data from one environment to another. So if I expand this, expand all, you can see all the different data I'm passing back and forth. Some of these are conditional. So all I have to do if I want to pass some data is, I don't want to mess with this too much because this is a live system, but unlike point-to-point integrations, you don't have to build a function and declare your variables and then write functions to handle those variables. All that's done for you. So all I have to do, if I want to pass the data here, coming from Agile, and pass it over to JD Edwards Enterprise 1. It's not going to work because it's a complex element. For example, I can just pass that over. No, it's not going to work either. You can't pass simple to complex elements, but as you can see, that's how some of this data is working right here. So it's just being passed from one to another, and when you click on it, it'll go ahead and do that automatically. And like I said, we can apply some logic to this data too. So here, you can see, I got some validation routines I can put here. But if I open up another one of these things, I go in here, and I have a list of different functions and ways I can manipulate that data. So here, I have some different functions that I can apply, and you can see what they do. So all of our help files will show exactly what these do, but if you've done any kind of development before, some of these will look real familiar. So I can concatenate strings, I can convert user strings with converted data, I can manipulate the date time formats, and if you ever want to know what a connector does in any in XPI, you just go to the help files. You can click F1 when you hit any one of these, and it'll just take you right to the help files and show you how to use that particular function. So here's a good example of one we use for JD Edwards Enterprise One. As we all know, JD, those of us who work with JDE know that JDE only recognizes Julian dates. So here, if I get a date value that's coming in from one environment, I can manipulate that here. So you don't really need to be a developer to use these things. You can click our functions. I can get my list of variables, and I can get a little creative and concatenate and if then else's and things like that. So the general idea behind XPI is that we can take an application and integrate with any other application in what we say is a code for utility, but we also give you the power, a very powerful tool that allows you to apply coding principles to your data. So in this particular example, that's the integration sync, but a very powerful and important part of our solution, what we propose, is that we have the ability to monitor what's going on in your environment after the data sync, during the data sync. So unlike a typical point-to-point integration, you just got a DLL that's sitting on a server someplace. Hopefully you've done all your due diligence and you've coded everything properly, but you have no way of monitoring what happens in that environment. So here we have a monitoring tool that allows us to see what's going on with that particular data integration. So this is the actual project that I was just showing a minute ago. It's the only one I have running, that's why it's in green. But these are all the different projects I have connected to the server. So when I open this up, I can see everything going on with that particular integration project. And so I can see everything that happened here. So here are my different steps, and here's the information. So there's a lot of different filters and things I can apply to get the information I need. So here's some of the things I just did. We like to say the good, the bad, and the ugly. So this is a very powerful tool that allows you to manage your integrations. So one of the things we can do here is we can pass application-specific error messages. So if JDE or Agile or some other product has a specific application that responds with a specific error when something happens, when the sync doesn't happen, we can pass that actual message here. So administrators don't have to be in the application to handle that. Obviously, we have our own error messages, but we can pass that here and handle that accordingly. So for here, the other nice thing too is each one of these little clips, this is actually, if I open this up, this is actually the metadata of the record I just created. So this is a really powerful tool. It allows you to see all the different data you're passing back and forth. So by looking at this, you can see the actual metadata that you pass back and forth, and that can help you troubleshoot, your integration projects. Okay, so an important part of our solution also is our in-memory data grid and how we orchestrate the integration back and forth. So as I discussed before, when the integration project runs in production, it runs as a Windows service in the background, and it has a very small digital footprint. Well, we take advantage of that and utilize a technology called in-memory data grid. And what that allows us to do is temporarily expand an internal server's RAM so we can orchestrate and pass a significant amount of data back and forth for the integration. It really speeds up the integration time. Also, it comes with built-in active-active clustering. So, since we have such small digital footprint, we typically deploy on several servers in your environment. And again, as a small digital footprint, doesn't need to be doesn't even have to be a dedicated magic server, and that gives us built-in failover. So if one server goes down, the other one can go ahead and pick up the slack, and your integrations are rolling along. And so, unlike a typical point-to-point integration, if your DLL becomes corrupted or that server goes down, well, there goes your integration. But not so with Magic. So, as you can see, this is a very powerful utility that is very easy to use and allows you to really speed up and implement your integrations in a timely manner. So Glenn, that's all I was prepared to show today. We left some time for questions.
Okay, thanks, Ted. We might want to take a look back at one of your flows during the Q&A. If you could show that, how fantastic. And while you're typing in your questions into the chat box and sending them to the host and presenter, I did have some questions ready for you, Ted. First of all, can XPI call RPG programs on power systems running IBMI?
Absolutely. We have a special IBMI connector that allows us to call various programs and integrate with that way.
Okay, the next question, is the monitor information that's logged accessible from outside the XPI application?
Excellent question. So in addition to the application I just showed you, we also have a web-based, we have a web-based monitoring tool as well. So you can get that from the web, information from the web as well.
Oh, okay. And we use Siemens Team Center. How would this work with other PLM systems?
So for Siemens or any other application, the way it would work is that we would just need to look for how we would integrate to that system. So, like if I go back here, we have a number of different generic connectors too. So for Siemens, I'm not knowledgeable of that particular application, but I would look to see if there's web service or APIs or some integration point that we can utilize. Most of these applications that we're working with have web services or things like that. And if really necessary, we have a data mapper connector that can work with any database out there, so we can integrate that way as well. So it just kind of depends on what's available. So as a general rule, we can talk to anything as long as the application can see the outside world.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I want to thank you very much, Ted, for your excellent demonstration.
Thank you.
And thanks to each of you for joining us. We hope to see you again on another Magic Software webinar coming up on May 3rd, mobile apps for Oracle ERP, and on May 5th, ERP to CRM integration. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.